Happy New Year 2021, and we're gonna start this year with a PyData daily meetup. And this time we have a very different format. Rather than just doing technical discussions on topics, we are holding a panel discussion this time. So yeah, welcome everyone. Welcome to PyData daily, and let's just start. I have a couple of slides, introduction slide, which is kind of my obligation to do before the starting of every meeting. So yeah, we're gonna start this. So yeah, who are we? And this is the question like everyone has, and not everyone knows. So yeah, I'm just gonna give a small intro about this. So I'm pretty sure that the people who are watching this live stream and or who are in this Zoom meeting may be using tools like scikit-learn, pandas, numpy, and all these tools for doing their data science work. Specifically, all these open data science tools. So basically, NumFocus is a non-profit 501c3 non-profit in US which supports all these open data source tools. Support as in providing them funding, developers, holding events, and fundraising, and all these different activities to keep them uh, running for a long time and sustainable, so that everyone can do their awesome data science work using that. And PyData is basically educational initiative of NumFocus, and it has around 160 or maybe 180 chapters all over the world. And we have come a long way. I think we started back in October 2016, and we are, I think, like the fourth largest meetup group of PyData all over the world. And we have done 3 conferences so far, and this is 42nd meetup for PyData. So yeah, as I've told already, that NumFocus is a non-profit, so it purely depends on donation from big organizations and from a general support from people like us. So if you feel like you want to donate and give back to the community, you can just head over to these links and just make a donation, because every penny counts. So yeah, we are live on YouTube, and so if you want to join the Zoom call, there's a link in the description of the YouTube. You can head over to that link and join the Zoom meeting and interact with the panelists and the moderators. And if you want to just watch the stream, you can just go to YouTube, and this link will redirect to your YouTube live stream. And where to ask questions? So I think there's a link in the description of the YouTube, which is kind of like a questionnaire, which over which you can put your questions during the panel discussion, and we'll take them after the panel discussion. And you can also put them into the YouTube live chat, because we have moderators all over the place, and they would be taking care of it. Yeah. So just a small introduction about speakers. We have Shagun. He works at Facebook AI as a research engineer. We have Kritika. She is researcher at IIIT Hyderabad, and also she leads a differential privacy lab over at OpenMined. And obviously we have Jaidev, as he's senior data scientist at Grameener. So yeah, we have an awesome panelist, and we prepared a bunch of very good topics for discussions. So yeah, sit tight, and it'll be fun. Yeah, obviously you can ask questions over Zoom chat, and the link that I've said already. You can just head over to those links and post the questions over there. We will take the questions from everywhere. Yeah, so this is a kind of important thing, which is like for every physical meetup or every physical conference, we have a code of conduct and we stick to it. And it is imperative that this code of conduct is being followed over at online meetups also. So if you want to read the full code of conduct, it's over the link which is at the bottom of the screen. And if the short version is that be nice and don't offend everyone. And as for the questions, please stick to the topic of discussion for the questions. Don't derail the discussion from your questions, and please be respectful. Yeah, we are every time looking for good speakers to present at our meetups and conferences. So if you have any good topics that you want to discuss, or if you have any idea you want to talk about, just go over to this link and create an issue over there, and we will be more than happy to take it forward and shape it in a perfect talk. So yeah, where to find us? We are everywhere. So I hope you can see all these social media handles like Twitter, Meetup, LinkedIn, and we are all over the internet by the username @PyData. So yeah, please go over and follow us over there, and yeah, tweet and spread the word to your friends to join meetups in future and conferences. Yeah, so we also have a public calendar. So we made this during last year during the online meetup. So we have a so if you just go to this link, you will be automatically subscribed to our public calendar, and you can. So we update every meetup, every quiz, every event, every challenge, and every conference over at Google Calendar. So it's like very good thing to keep track of everything that is happening over at PyData. Yeah, let's get started. I would not take much of time, and yeah, over to you, Arnav. Arnav, am I audible?
Yeah, Sanket, you are audible.
Okay. Okay, seems like there has been some internet issue for with the moderator. Let me check what's going on, and I'll be back. Okay, seems like he will be joining in a minute. So just to start a discussion, I would yeah. So yeah, just to start the discussion and familiarize everyone with what the panel discussion is all going to be about. So we have prepared a bunch of topics which circles around data science and privacy and ML and data protection law and these kind of things. So and we also have like interesting question about like how to like what are the best way to get yourself into the career and in data science and how to avoid common mistakes if you are entering in the field of data science. So yeah, I mean this is all the brief of topic is all about, and yeah, we will be starting this discussion in just a minute.
Okay, he's just joining. He was in the waiting room. He should be in now.
Yeah, I have invited him. Arnav, can you hear us? I think you're on mute.
Yeah. Can you all hear me?
Yeah.
All right, great. I think we're just gonna have to get used to in this post-lockdown and post-COVID world, internet shutdowns and calls dropping are just the new normal now. So let's just get started. Before I start, I really want to thank all the panelists here for spending the time, for taking out time from their very busy schedules and sharing the time with us. I'm really excited to have this conversation. I think we have a great set of topics and a great set of speakers who have ideas over a very large variety of topics. So I think this is going to be a fun conversation. So to get started, we thought it would be interesting to just share our stories in the sense of how we became where we are today, and it can point to somewhat like it can give ideas to people who are just starting out, or just things to avoid, or some pitfalls so that we can avoid. So for me personally, and we also wanted to highlight the role that open source played in this whole picture. So PyData being an open source organization and being this community, I know for myself, it has helped me a lot getting exposure, understanding that this is even possible. Something like when GSOC first came around and I found out that, okay, people actually do this and you can get all sorts of things are possible. It just opened up so many doors of possibilities. And volunteering for PyData in these last couple of years has just been exceptional. So it's played a very central role into what I've become today and the way I approach these things. So I was just hoping that if all of you could share these insights into into your journey, I think it would be very insightful for all the audience members. So maybe starting with Jaidev, just great.
That's so yeah. I mean, storytelling is, and we all know that it's a fairly up and coming market, but I'm really bad at these sort of questions. Self-taught data scientist. My academically, at least, my background is in signal processing, and just so happened that some of the projects that I was doing back in school were very closely related with analytics and collecting data from experiments and analyzing it and all. So that's how I got into machine learning. Then I became interested in the software and the tooling around machine learning. And as far as my career goes, I guess I owe pretty much all of it to the open source community. My first internship was right after I presented a talk at SciPy India. Like the talk finished and I was offered an internship, as so and it was just something very simple, like I had a bunch of code in MATLAB, and I was taking a course called convex optimization. This was like a couple of years before Coursera came out. So this was a course by Stephen Boyd on it was on YouTube. It was a Stanford course, and I was just I had nothing to do for a semester, so I just took that course. And he mentioned that there's this language called Python. If one of you is really crazy enough to go and implement this MATLAB code in Python, you get extra credit. And I'd never heard of that expression. The only crazy languages I knew were assembly. Even C, C++ weren't as scary back then as they are now. So I said, okay, yeah, let me just convert all of this code to Python, and that's how I discovered Python. And I gave a couple of, I wrote a couple of papers about that project, and that's what. But I mean, the papers. Writing the papers was a separate thing, but introducing that work to the broader open source community and building on that is, in a nutshell, led me to where I am. So yeah, thank you. You're on mute, Anna.
Yeah, I couldn't unmute myself. Sanket, can you make me host real quick? I think there's an issue there.
Yeah,
But
sure,
anyway,
sure. I'm sorry.
Sorry about that. So yeah, I think that was a wonderful story. It is hard just putting into these small words just what made you who you are. So, but I think that's a wonderful way. I think you were introduced to the community. Kritika, how about you?
Myself. So, firstly, I'm quite young in my career. Like I have a master's, so I'm still like in the education part of my career. I started out as an electronics student in a university, in a national university in Chennai, and 1 year into my electronics degree, I did computer science. So I applied for something called branch transfer and I shifted to computer science in my second year. And then after 2 years of studying at this Chennai University, I applied for something called lateral entry for IIIT Hyderabad. And I'd known that IIIT Hyderabad coding culture and a really good research culture. So I applied for that, and the preparation was kind of like a gate exam, and I got really lucky and I got in there. And so then I kind of restarted with my second year in IIIT Hyderabad, and yeah, just having all these uncertainties makes it kind of surreal. And at IIIT Hyderabad, I had the fortune to take some really good courses and also to interact with seniors and batchmates who were very strongly pursuing open source contribution and research and just like passionately doing things within computer science and related fields. So um, my focus was always on research because I've been a dual degree student, and till until last year, I hadn't looked into open source at all. But at one point, I realized that okay, there is this really great community which is working on technology that I'm interested in. And so last year, 2019, was when I made my first pull request. And so, yeah, I'm very new to this, but I can say that being a part of a community which cares about the same things as you do has a really positive impact. And just because of being a part of OpenMined, I have gotten the opportunities to give talks in different places, to interact with really good people around the world who are working on these things, to interact with people like Shagun from companies like Facebook and everything. And it's just it's very fulfilling to see that something that you've worked on has the potential to help people. And yeah, I think those are some of the things that I want to highlight. Uh, Possibly the biggest sources of help have been my friends and my seniors, like more than any professors or anything. And they've kind of been in it, they've been with me in it for like a long time. So that's a very valuable thing to have, like having a good set of friends who help you and who also encourage you even when you might be struggling with research or you might be going through tough phases. Maybe you're facing a lot of rejections for internships. So yeah, I didn't intern many times, but I interned once at Microsoft, and I interned recently at OpenMined, like a research intern, and both have been great experiences. And more particular to ML, it started out by taking Andrew Ng's Coursera course, and now it's at a place where I feel pretty passionate about it, and I also feel like sharing these insights with people who are much younger to me, like school kids in 10th grade, 11th grade, so that early on they can see kind of what's fascinating about this. So yeah.
Certainly, yeah. Thank you so much. I believe so as well. Like community is such an important thing, and when we are either struggling on or when we wanna find new things, this is always there to fall back upon. And yeah, thank you for sharing that. And finally, we have Shagun. You've been part of PyData Devi, PyDevi, and so many other open source communities as well. Could you just share how you got there? Yeah, I think Shagun's facing the same host thing. You can't unmute. Yeah, there he is.
Thank you. Yeah, so my experience has been a little bit different, not drastically, but a bit different. I started with machine learning probably in the final year of my undergrad. We used to have a course called as artificial neural networks, which was very different from the deep learning that we do these days. But that was really the only flavor I got during my undergrad. After that, I was at Adobe Research for 2 years, and then I went for master's. So yeah, so it was a mix of industry research plus some experience in academia. I would expand on the contribution of open source to the contribution of just open community. I mean, I interacted with a lot of people. Um, I never collaborated with them. I never raised any PRs on their GitHub repos or anything. But the very fact that I just met those people, it was enriching. It was extremely useful. Um, and I think it plays a very important role. Uh, Luckily for me, even though I did not do any ML in my undergrad, our college had a very good open source community. So I got introduced to open source much sooner than I got introduced to ML. And in those early days of my life, that is not of open source, you feel a lot less hesitant to ask doubts and ask questions and make stupid pull requests. And I luckily did those things when I was in that age where it was okay to make mistakes. So I would raise a stupid PR request and someone said, no, this is not how this is supposed to be done. So I benefited a lot from the community that way, and I'm glad that PyData and other initiatives are there which are trying to broaden the scope and bring the benefits to more and more people.
Great, thank you so much. And who of us hasn't made these stupid pull requests, right? I mean, we've all been there. So,
always okay to make mistakes, always, no matter who you are.
Yeah, that's what what's it all about. All right. So going along the same line, the next thing that I wanted to tackle was when we asked, I mean, we all shared how open source played a part in your own career. But in general, you just pick up things. You have friends who've seen, who have made similar achievements as well. What advice do you have for people starting out? How can one, I mean, obviously there's no one right path of making it in open source or as a student. But when one is a college student, what initiatives can one take that pushes them in this direction of just getting more exposure and finding these opportunities? Kritika, that one's for you in the beginning. Let's see.
Do you want me to go first?
Yeah.
Okay. So one advice that I feel I can say through my experience is be extremely project driven. Try to do things, go beyond the scope of your coursework in your undergrad. Find something that interests you. Maybe you find it through courses, maybe you find it elsewhere, but try to complete projects and try to do a good job at them. So in the process of doing a simple project, you can learn so many skills, maybe web app based skills, maybe how to write code that actually works fast. You can learn how to optimize. There's so much to learn, and having something like that with a clear end goal really helps you like bring out the result, rather than, okay, I'm just going to read 10 textbooks or something more abstract. Like that doesn't help as much. And also, like, just start small, start with whatever little amount you know. Don't think that you need to know the encyclopedia of ML, machine learning, or any other area before you start. So just start with the simplest things you know and build from there. Those are two things that have helped me a lot.
Yeah, that's very valuable advice. I mean, ML is such a vast topic and it's expanding every day. There's new research coming out. It's almost impossible to just cover everything and then get started. You'll never be done. It's like a lifelong process. So I think that's very valuable advice. Jaidev, would you have anything to say on the matter?
Yeah.
Excuse me for the slightly long-winded answer. One of the very first books I read this year was Atomic Habits by James Clear. And how did open source contributions become a habit for me? Well, again, oh yeah, I think I saw it on Kritika's timeline as well. So how did it become a habit for me? And you see that when we talk about habits or what people have achieved, we are usually looking at the tip of the iceberg, or we are looking at the effect of what they've been doing for a while. So again, to just crystallize what Kritika said, find a good problem to solve. The rest will follow. And be persistent, be, regular about it, and, make it interesting in the sense that make it rewarding for yourself. So the rest of it, the visibility and the opportunities that follow, that should happen as a consequence. Your completely the kind of nonsense that happens around Hacktoberfest, and avoid that. There it's you can't have 1 month of activity throughout a year, 1 month of really bad activity, by the way, and then expect that it's going to sustain beyond any specific time period. So first and foremost, have an interesting problem to solve. Seek it, find it, create one yourself if that helps. So something that I tell my students very often is that, the most common question I get is like, I don't have an idea for a project. So look around yourself. Do you think that there's a problem you could solve with data? And then they say no. And then say, no, sleep on it. Wait for a couple of days and then say no to me back then. And then usually they come up with results like, I would like to improve, I would like to track my health activity better. So great, Google has that data, right? So if you have a smartphone, you can do something with it, make an app, whatever. And that later, trickles down into something like a good project, good, open source contributions, or even publications, who knows? So it has to be, we usually, unfortunately, get this backwards.
Yeah. Absolutely. And there's no wrong problem to find, right? It can be something small, like just improving something that takes 10 minutes to reducing it to a single minute of your life. It can be like a small life improvement, or it can be completely world changing. It's just something that you have to care about.
And people are usually, very quick to say that, okay, this is a really trivial problem. Well, if it is really trivial, solve it. You'll know exactly how trivial it is. And if it is trivial, you've only lost 10 minutes. Big deal.
Yeah. And in that process, you end up learning so much, right? Yeah. All right, let's move on to Shagun. What do you think one can do just to increase the chances of making it?
One thing is be open to failure, which means you raise a PR and 1 year later no one merges it and the code changes. It's okay. It's okay. Not every contribution that you are trying to make has to be successful. Be open to fail. And it sounds so easy, right? Sure, I'm open to failing. That's why I'm trying something. But no, very often, just to take the Hacktober example, people would specifically find typos in the documentation because they think, hey, this would land. Who is going to check that? Be more ambitious, and that doesn't mean be more greedy or something, but set higher goals and be ready to fail. It's okay to fail when you're aiming big. A lot of time people get early success and then they're like, yeah, sure, now it's done. Now we don't have to do anything else. And okay, that's if it works for you, why not? But you can be more ambitious and you can accept that probably 90% of your endeavors are gonna fail, and that's okay. But your bets are so big, even the 10% that succeed, that would be more than enough to compensate for the 90% that fail. So just make bigger ambitions, just have bigger ambitions.
The very first PR that I opened on any open source project ever, well over a decade ago, is still not merged.
I dare not say the first PR I opened.
But I agree. Yeah, I think we think too little of ourselves, and just being a little bit more ambitious wouldn't hurt. Life just surprises you in so many different ways. So just take that step. It can't hurt. Absolutely. So thanks.
And the very fact that there are many of us out there, and the very fact that so many of us are in this field clearly means that it's no rocket science. This isn't winning a Nobel Prize or something. It's a habit, like I said. You'll get there.
Yeah. Pretend it till you make it. Yeah. All right. Moving on to the next question. I think so. A lot of people are really worried now that because of COVID, it has affected so many different industries. Industries, especially the more vulnerable ones like restaurants and stuff, they've been devastated. But luckily for us, it hasn't been that bad. We were computer scientists. They're always able to work from home even in normal circumstances. And now, so it hasn't been as bad as it has for some of the other industries. So we do have that privilege, but there are still hiring freezes, and it still has so many job losses in India and abroad. So what do you think actually has been the effect of COVID? How bad has it been from before? And yeah, what do you have as an advice for people who should they start approaching different industries if they're only like borderline interested in computer science or machine learning or the overall Python ecosystem? If they're just starting out, would it be better to maybe go into something else, or is this still a right time? I think this time we'll go with Jaidev first.
Well, first off, I don't have any data to back this up. We are not so far beyond COVID that I'll be able to make any projections or predictions. Having said that, and tragic as the pandemic has been, I think we as a industry or even as a species have shown ourselves to be far stronger than we thought we would. I really don't think that this this incident is going to cause any irrevocable damage. So, which by the way, also, I mean, later when we talk about privacy, one very interesting thing that Farhat Habib said to me was, people are just very eager to give away their data to whatever app, somebody recommends they install. And one of the things that he said really struck me, you know what, tomorrow the pandemic is going to end, but people are still going to have your data. That's not going to come back. So, but anyway, the point to take away here is that the pandemic will end and we'll come stronger out of it. So yeah, stick to your guns. I'm not at all pretending that this will be easy for people. It will be tough, but you'll be the stronger for it.
Yeah. I see Jaidev is the optimist among us. But Shagun, let's go with you.
On this rare occasion, yes.
I don't know specifically how much COVID has affected ML hiring per se. So I'll probably make a more broader comment. I have worked in ML for the last 5 years, and I think it's a bit unfortunate that everyone just wants to do ML. I mean, you want to do ML because you like ML, that's awesome, that's great. That's super great. But you want to do ML because you think that's the hot item, or the data science, as it used to be described, as the sexiest job of 21st century or something. That's the wrong reason, and this is the kind of things you start seeing. We want the field to be democratized. That's awesome. That's great. We want the barrier to be entry to be low. Sure, that's awesome. We want the education to be accessible to more and more people. Yes, but you cannot just create jobs out of thin air. If tomorrow you graduate 10,000, 100,000, a million people, the jobs would not just come out. So probably my comment is more broad in the sense that it's good people like ML and so on, but there are other aspects of CS and beyond CS as well. Where good research is appreciated, is welcome, it's useful, and people should not just do ML because it's ML. They should have good reason to know that their interest lies in this area.
Yeah, certainly. And I mean, I think we can have another entire panel discussion about what AI hype and its effects on the technology and what it does. But thank you so much for that. Kritika, what do you think? How has COVID affected the industry, in your opinion? Obviously, none of us have actual data, but just in terms of your experience.
Could you repeat that? I was trying to unmute myself and I didn't hear what you were saying.
No, I was just repeating the question. So we were trying to understand how has COVID actually affected people in losing their jobs and being in the ability of them being able to do their jobs, and whether if somebody is still online about deciding whether I should, maybe they're just borderline interested in ML and something else, would it still be a right time to enter the field?
So lots of points to talk about there. It's definitely a good time to enter the field because the field has, not just on its own, but in being applied to other fields, has a lot of great applications and opportunities. But you're right that lots of people have lost jobs. Lots of people are finding it very hard to get a job right now, and that's just something like I cannot comment on that, but I do think that more personally, this, like, if you can afford to, this is the time to build yourself up, like build your skills up really well, like if you can afford to. So now is the time where you really practice and you really learn new things, which will only improve your profile, make you more hireable, which will also give you a better career direction, which you will enjoy more. That is one thing, and the other thing is that um, there's an entire part of ML which is trying to work on making ML more applicable, more easily applicable, and more easily usable by non-experts or non-ML researchers or data analysts. And I feel like that is really important, because if doctors and we want people in governments to effectively use AI, they should also be able to understand what's happening. It's not that, okay, we just trust this engineer, whatever this engineer is saying. So there is a lot of work in that scope where you have to take the extra mile and learn not just about ML but also policy, or also have domain knowledge in that field. And such things can help create these new kind of jobs for all sorts of organizations. So that's a space to look out. Like, one example is that recently Oxford University has started these not Oxford, sorry about that, but there are programs like MBBS, like doctoral programs, which are also teaching those doctors how to use computers, and I mean, not computers in the basic sense, but also have an understanding of AI and ML, so that they can also work on that as well. And even PhDs who are pursuing like these strongly medical fields, they're also dabbling in AI and ML. So having that kind of combination of having some domain expertise in some domain with AI/ML can be really powerful for the upcoming future.
Yeah, it's an excellent point. I mean, I don't like the phrase that data is the new oil or AI is the new electricity, but no one can doubt that it is a really transformative technology, and it affects a lot of different areas. So it's always wise to. I think Finland is one where they have like an entire a general AI course just to inform the public about its misuses, about how it's just it's almost like knowing the language of everyday things. It's like knowing how to operate I don't know, a kitchen equipment or something like that, something very basic and essential to living every day. So
yeah,
that's a fantastic point.
Another thing like I'd quickly want to add is that despite all the negativity around data and privacy issues, which is valid, this pandemic has become incredibly easy for all people, relatively, thanks to the effective access of internet and being able to track how the virus is spreading, being able to have contact tracing and things like that. So there's a huge plus in just the effective control of COVID, thanks to the kind of infrastructure that's been built.
Yeah, I agree completely. I mean, I don't think anyone can doubt the role it played in mitigating these, in doing analysis. I think everybody looks at these charts every day about how much the cases dropped, and just that instant ability of providing access to information, data journalism there is just doing wonders. But thank you all for your answers. Moving on to a slightly more technical session, we start with privacy of machine learning models. So something very exciting and something that's very close to my heart as well. And I believe everybody on this panel has interacted with the privacy aspect of machine learning models in some way or the other. But just to begin with, there is this basic dichotomy in machine learning models in that they just require more data and they require access to personal information to get better. There's absolutely no other way for it to learn without having access to this personal information. So there is this dichotomy in the sense that it needs more data, but we should also protect data. So these two are always colliding with each other. And we know that that's not the only way, but there are ways, and we will get a little bit more deep into how that is possible with private machine learning models. But just what do you think about this always struggling two forces? And let's begin with Shagun.
Yeah, so first of all, my research does not really come close to privacy in ML. So my answers may not be technically, up to date, or I might not know the state of the art in privacy preserving ML and so on. I slightly disagree with the premise that these two things have to be contradicting each other. Again, I'm not up to date with the advances, but from what I understand, you can encrypt the data, and I just remember the high-level words, which are like homeomorphic encryption and so on, where you can still get reasonably close predictions from the model without the model actually remembering the data or being able to reproduce the data. So, and again, I could be completely wrong. Kritika might be able to provide more technical details around it. So from that perspective, I don't see these things as being contradictory. What I see as an engineer is there's a technical gap, maybe theoretical, maybe the theory is there, maybe we just don't know how to make it efficient. And that is where the opportunity lies. So, so there's this branch which says this is how it can be done. And now our engineer is complaining, but it's going to be too slow. So let's make it fast enough. Let's scale it up. This is how I see it.
Right, good. I was trying to refer to it a little bit more philosophical than technical, just to begin with. So even if there are ways of protecting the identity of the people that we're getting the data of, there is still the need of extracting the data, even if it is protected in some manner or the other. So what do you think about that?
No, you'll probably have to repeat the last line. Sorry.
Sorry, I didn't get you.
You would have to repeat the last line when you said that even if we can, I think you said even if we can identify people, and I missed the part after that. So there were a few words after that.
Yeah, no. So I was just trying to say that even if we can protect the identity of people using privacy preserving machine learning, there is still this need of extraction of data. It still needs to be extracted from the users. It doesn't have to be identifiable. It's still, the process of extraction is still happening. So not getting into the technical details of it, which we will in a little bit, but just as a philosophical point of view, do you think those two collide with each other, or do you think that it's still fine, that this is the new way to live now?
I still slightly disagree. If I'm making a Google query, the query could be encrypted, and the encrypted query could be, again, I don't know whether this is feasible or not. I don't research in this area, but that encrypted query, can that encrypted query not be fed as an input to the model? So when we say that we are giving away our data, the moment I start typing something, it's being typed, right? Anything that's on internet is on internet. So the question here is, what do we mean when we say that we are giving away the data? So is the fact that I'm typing something is equivalent to I'm giving away data? If yes, then probably we cannot use computers. That's that puts a hard limit. If the question is more like, I want to search something and I want to make a query for that, but I don't want anyone to be able to have access to that query, I think that is very much doable. Again, I don't know to what extent, but if it's not perfectly doable, then again, that's an interesting problem to be able to solve. But if the stance is that I do not want to even share what I'm searching for, which is a valid stance to have, I hope there's a solution for that as well. It's just that I do not know how a technical system would handle a query which is not known. So yeah, that's where I'll probably leave it.
Yeah, absolutely. I hope so too. Jaidev, what are your thoughts?
Well, there are two broad points. One is that, people, including practitioners, consumers, all sorts of people involved in AI, they need to understand that the best of our models are incredibly fragile. And by fragile, I mean susceptible to adversarial, not just attacks, but anything that's adversarial. And on the other side, you see that privacy is, I feel like it's as much I wouldn't go so far as to say that it's not a tech problem, but it's much more a people problem. It's a culture problem. in the sense that, often we see colleagues and even clients who they won't come out and say that, prove to us that you are not, doing funny things with our data, or you're not saving our data, or you're not, just prove to us that your pipeline is watertight, end-to-end encrypted. That's not what they say. All they say is, promise us that you won't do anything with this. And of course, we won't do anything with it, because otherwise, there are consequences to that. But ultimately, all we're saying is, cross my heart and hope to die. I'm not Scout's order. I'm not going to touch your data beyond what you've asked me to do with it, right? And of course, you can see how that can go wrong very easily, right? And it does go wrong occasionally. So that's how breaches happen. That's how systems fail. That's quite likely, and those are the scenarios that we need to prepare for. But yeah, to summarize, that's the issue. It's much more. I believe that it's much more a people problem than it's a technology problem. I'll of course defer to Kritika on this. But the fact that this isn't said or acknowledged often enough is big part of the problem.
Yeah, absolutely. And finally, moving on to Kritika, I know that you've done so much work in this area, and yeah, I believe you also published a paper in 2019, a survey paper about on all the different techniques of doing privacy-preserving machine learning. Is she still with us? I think her video is frozen. Can you hear us, Kritika?
Yeah, I'm here. I'm
Right,
I'm
okay.
just listening to what you're saying.
Right,
Yeah, I
no
can.
worries. Yeah, so yeah, I was just
Okay. So
yeah.
yeah. So like first of all, I agree with what Shagun had to say. The idea that they don't necessarily need to be conflicting with each other, and raised the true practical issues that we're facing with privacy today. So I'm just going to take a step back to kind of give a bird's eye view of the whole thing, and I'll try to be as short and crisp as possible. So one thing to question is why do we collect data for machine learning? So maybe we're trying to collect people's healthcare data, and by figure out whether there is any correlation between a person smoking and the chances of him or her getting cancer. So the reason to do all of this data analysis is hypothesis that smoking causes cancer. We're not, I mean, even as data scientists or institutions, we're not specifically interested in my data or Shagun's data or anybody else's data. We want to confirm important hypotheses, and we want to be able to apply this machine learning predictor to good use. That's the goal there. That privacy is not at odds with the goal of real machine learning. So essentially, it's like saying, I want to see the big picture, but I do not want to look at any individual's data. And if you look at generalization in machine learning, that aim exactly collides with the aim of privacy, where we're not interested in making our model overfit to people's data. We want the model to be able to say, hey, I've seen all your data, and this is like my key learning, which is applicable to large groups of people. So you will see a lot of recent research work coming out that making data sets private or making machine learning models private, and that actually is helping them. So, and the other thing, more related to what Jaidev was talking about, is that your pipeline, your data processing pipeline, from your input raw data till your final machine learning model, is going to be only as private as the weakest component in the pipeline. So now here, we cannot rely only on encryption. We cannot rely only on differential privacy. We cannot only rely on or proper architectures and interfaces that maintain these things. We have to come up with this method analysis, which is interactive, like data owners can talk to data analysts and people in this whole process, but at the same time, there's no privacy leakage. So right now, a lot of research is happening and systems are being built way of another thing which you I think Arnav you spoke about is that what's the point of machine learning models being private when you're still requiring data to be collected from somewhere, right? So one kind of approach to that is to think of federated learning. Federated or one view of it is that if I want to train a model with everybody's heart rate data and the number of steps they walked in a day, which is there on their phone, instead of fetching everyone's mobile phone data to my server, I'll send my machine learning model to everyone's mobile phone. So that way, I'm not actually collecting anybody's data. I'm only training my model with your data and I'm getting the model back. So that's one way to think about how massive data collection. And one last thing that I wanted to talk about in this entire purview is the meaning of privacy. So I could happily tell my friends and family about maybe the fact that I was expecting a salary hike, but I didn't get it, or something like that. But I wouldn't want my colleagues to know about that. So privacy is a very contextual thing. Some things are private to me and I wouldn't want to share with anybody in the world. Some things are okay if I share it with a few people I know, but not or general public. So understanding the nature of privacy comes from understanding how information flows across the system. So we have to try to see which information flows are good for people and which information flows are bad. And yeah, just understanding this entire thing comes under the purview of something known as contextual integrity. And that is a more holistic approach to privacy rather than, making some numbers hidden or encrypted or things like that. So yeah, those are a few
Great,
And the
thank you
point
so
about
much.
generalization was really interesting because now, in a sense, I can sort of say that if a model overfits, then maybe something can be reverse engineered from it, and therefore it's not too secure. That's something like that allows me to tie privacy um, directly to my model building. That was very useful.
Absolutely. And so many other points. I mean, I think that answer wonderfully put.
Yeah. So like, can I answer to that?
Yeah, of course.
Please, yes.
Yeah. So like your concern is extremely valid that just having this distributed learning setup is not enough, and it's possible that the network is memorizing the data. So there's something called differentially private deep learning, which is a work which is used along with federated learning. So they can give the user the guarantee that this is the amount of privacy I'm giving you, or that's what the user can.
Kritika, I think we're losing your audio. Could you maybe turn your video off and try answering? If you can still hear me.
Okay. Is it clear now?
The audio is much better now. Yeah. Thanks.
The video is still frozen. So.
It is. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't.
All right, no worries.
So,
Let's go
yeah,
ahead and
did anything I say made sense? Was it all cut up?
no, it certainly did. It is still lagging a little bit. All right, no worries. Let's move on. In the meantime, I think that answer wonderfully puts into context the whole concept of privacy. I think she beautifully mentioned that privacy isn't this one monolith thing. It means certain different things. And I mean, Jaidev also highlighted how it's the issue of ML models isn't the issue of ML models being having access to private data is not just a technical problem. We need to collectively, as a society, understand this in a more sociological point of way and put the thing into context and understand the problem in a much deeper way than it's not just engineers who can solve this problem. So everybody needs to come together and put down rules for, and that's how we go about almost every aspect of society. It's not one couple of individuals who make a decision. It's just we collectively decide what our morals are. And that's why we have all of these different rules in different places. So a couple of years ago, in back when we could have conferences in the last PyData conference, we had this wonderful panel where we discussed the need for data protection law in India. And 2 years later, we've seen that now there's policing happening in Bangalore. There's facial recognition technology being deployed in so many different places. I saw yesterday that private schools in Delhi are using AI and facial recognition tech to identify, to do school attendance and so many different things. So 2 years later now, and also of course there was the recent the Signal and WhatsApp fiasco. Everybody just lost their shit when Facebook suddenly dropped this really wrong message of, okay, your account will be deleted and I have my relatives moving to Signal. So there is this need, there's this understanding, there's this just this desire for people to having protection against these large companies, and they don't feel empowered. And so what are your thoughts in how far behind India is in terms of its data protection law, the need for it, and yeah, just if one does go about it, what kind of aspects should be covered? Obviously, we're not law researchers, and we don't have a great perspective in terms of how to bring this policy into effect. But as machine learning practitioners and as users of this technology every day, we do have a nuanced aspect of what kind of things that we need to be protected against. So, Shagun, maybe you want to give us your thoughts on that? I know I'm sorry about the long and complicated question.
I mean, on the start, I haven't followed the data laws in India, not now, not before, so I can probably not comment on that. I can make a few general statements. One is the effort has to be grassroots, which means people have to first understand, forget about the law, forget about who's tracking what. That's sure, that's important, but we'll come to it. The first thing is people have to understand what does it mean. Even between the four of us or the five of us, we were not all agreeing on what privacy is. So, and I'm not saying there's a right answer, but people have to be aware of it, that there is this thing called as privacy, and this is what it means. Regarding specific government institutions, changes, those things, again, I haven't followed all of them, so clearly it's not, yeah, I would not have that sort of an educated guess, but I think the basic thing which should be applicable irrespective of what these policies is educating people more, making them more aware. And I'm not saying give them courses in differential privacy. I mean, sure, that can be reserved for engineers and others, but people should be made more aware that, look, this is how things are happening. And whether you like it, dislike it, build an opinion. Just, you should know that there is something happening. It should not be an afterthought. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that it's so much more essential now that unless we know, unless we understand the the possible effects and how this technology is going to affect us, we can't make an informed decision on what we should be doing and what is the right thing. So thanks. Jaidev?
Well, 3 stories from the recent past. Only yesterday I read a tweet about, this was a Times of India report on how the Lucknow police is going to use cameras to detect expressions of women to try and predict if they are in trouble. And everybody is criticizing it, not for the wrong reasons, in the sense that what, this is never going to work. People make scared faces all the time. Just doesn't mean they are in trouble. And at the same time, it's not like the Lucknow police has that kind of bandwidth that this model keeps on throwing tons of false positives and you will be able to do something also. This is not going to work. And I was thinking, like, really, that's not the point. Even if the model did get better and this issue was addressed, there would still be a lot more to deal with. The second story again recently is the WhatsApp leaks, Arnab Goswami's WhatsApp leaks, right? There is this entire rhetoric going on around that story. These aren't arguments made by, random trolls on Twitter or something. These are lawmakers making these arguments, so what if he said something? So what if he did something? And, he allowed his data to go up on the web because he's a patriot and whatnot, like completely, tangential stuff to what really is the matter, and that sort of leads me to believe that, people seriously don't understand the difference between privacy and secrecy. Finally, then there's, Arogya Setu and, a bunch of other apps, it's like, you wouldn't mind giving away all your data to Facebook or Instagram. Why do you have such a problem with the government tracking you? So, I mean, the point of all of this is that we are really unprepared for this. It's on nobody's priority list. Nobody. It's going to take ages before somebody. The Internet Freedom Foundation is doing some great work in terms of exposing these things. And recently they came up with, I think, I forget the name, I regret. I'll probably look it up and share it in the chat. But they came up with a think tank that is actively monitoring, or at least, sort of keeping up with whatever the government's been trying to do in terms of data privacy or invading data privacy, both sides of the coin.
Yeah.
And if they end up, making some waves, or if they find somebody who is politically non-opportunistic enough to lobby for them, then there is hope. But otherwise, we are terribly, terribly ill prepared for this.
Yeah.
I don't think we're going to see the data privacy law anytime in the next decade. I'm absolutely happy to be proven wrong.
I couldn't agree more. And yeah, do share the link with us if you do find it. I think it'll be nice for the community to see and maybe chip in or spread the word around. And I see that we have Kritika back. So welcome back. You didn't miss much, but we were discussing this really interesting topic about the data protection law in India and the need for it. So, and what I mentioned was that there is this excessive use of AI, machine learning in tech. We don't understand its possible consequences, some of it. Sometimes we don't even ask the question whether this should be built or not. And we just go ahead. And there's all sorts of wrong predictions that they just mentioned, trying to find, I'm sorry, what was the exact one? They looked at women's faces and they were trying to judge.
Looking at women's faces and trying to predict if they are in trouble. That's what the Lucknow police says they are going to try and do.
Looking at women's faces and trying to predict if they are?
In trouble, looking at their expressions.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, go ahead.
Hello?
Yep, we can hear you. Go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, great. Personally, I don't have much background or insight in this area. Although I do feel that most tech-related applications, they sustain only if they add value to people's lives in some sense. So it's hard to say things in a black and white manner that, should we even consider building this application? Because it'll work out only if it's actually helping people. But that being said, yes, most people in the tech space and most people who are working with any business don't look into the kind of and I think very nascent stage when it comes to applying AI to a lot of things. Like I know all the big companies are doing it, but getting that to become a part of many different organizations. Personally, I'm all for it, and I feel that performing that in a transparent manner can be really beneficial. Like, for example, the Indian COVID app, Arogya Setu, they released the code publicly, and I thought that was a great thing to do. So at least in the initial few years, I think that might be a great way to get started in this direction.
Yeah, thanks so much. And so many wonderful different points. I think with Arogya Setu, there was initially there weren't, and then there was the societal pressure or the pressure from people that you really should. There's people doing this in Europe and they did this for contact tracing. And that really highlights the point that Jaidev and others made earlier as well, that there is this need for education, for understanding the implications of these technologies. And yeah, thanks so much for sharing that perspective. I think it's really valuable.
Yeah, I completely agree with them. Like I missed what they were saying because of my network, but I completely agree with them.
Yeah, absolutely. So going on, this is again, there was this workshop paper. I think Sanket shared it with you, all of you earlier, and I found this really interesting. It was a really different approach to how ethics is usually considered. So it was a position paper, just for everyone listening. And I think we'll try and link the paper in either the description or the Zoom chat or someplace. But it talks about, it was in the NeurIPS Broad Impact Workshop last year, and it talks about how algorithms or the ethical framework that that research is conducted in is normally conducted in the West. So because a lot of the research happens in the West, the frameworks that are used and the policies that go around it are just taken as it is and then put them, they're just directly transferred to another area, whether it be Africa or South America or India. This paper specifically talks about how the algorithms and the framework can't directly be ported. And I think it's a wonderful paper. But I want to get all of your thoughts that now that most of these algorithms have been at least initially developed in the West, and they, of course, a lot of it is math. In the end, it takes in data. So if the obvious point can just be made that if the data is local, then we should be fine, right? The algorithm would perform in similar ways. That it shouldn't be a big issue. But when deployment is considered, that's a whole different ballgame, right? The edge cases, and as software developers, we know that the QA just finds all of these extremely, the way it's meant to be used, it's never going to be used that way. So I just want to get your thoughts on the problems that this poses, the potential, how the needs for how we need to recontextualize the talk about data and how models are being deployed, and whether there needs to be this moving into this digital India and localizing production. Do we need to do a similar sort of approach for AI as much as well, or is it still fine to extract most of the things from there and then just contextualize it to an Indian perspective. And let's start with Kritika on this one, if your audio is okay. Kritika, can you hear me?
Hello?
Yeah.
Yeah. So sorry about that, network issues. So it's a really good question that you've asked. I don't have the final answer to it, but I think there's an element of both. Like by nature, machine learning and artificial intelligence is like, you're not biasing the model in any way. You are letting the data build the model, and in that way I think that there's a good scope for us to maybe start with the same algorithms. Like generally I don't think the problems in the algorithms, and apply it. But at the same time, like research in the West has shown that there's a bias, maybe community bias or gender bias or something in the final model will need to happen. But like if you look at what transfer learning is, maybe you start with a model or a network that it does well on a general task, like detecting shapes, for example, and then you fine tune it further to maybe handwritten digit recognition or something. So I definitely think there's scope for that, where we start with what they've done and we build on that, so as to not sort of reinvent the wheel and use the best of their learnings. But I think the bigger problem in kind of addressing issues, Indian diversity related issues, is how do we actually capture all the data in a meaningful manner? So, just simple data points, maybe physical attributes of people might not be enough to actually capture their susceptibility to having diabetes or things like that. So understanding the Indian context and how people's livelihoods differ and how that affects various aspects of their life, and having a more rich way of not only collecting data but also for them to be able to receive the benefits of any sort of diagnosis would be like the key difference. Like there's so much infrastructure that we need to build, and yeah, that's it.
Great, thank you so much. So many points I agree with there. Yeah. Shagun, let's go with you next. What are your thoughts on the matter?
Sorry, I haven't read the paper, but I can again just make some general comments. Forget the data, forget the architecture, forget the loss function. This is a much wider problem. Even the cases where you have a deterministic algorithm, let's take a concrete example. I want to do last mile delivery of my packets to my customers. Now this has no ML. Maybe you can put in some fancy ML, but this is a very general problem. Can a solution developed in the West can it be applied here? Most likely not. Not only is that, there's this classic joke that the address would be given like, go to the shop, ask the guy the address. This is what would be actually written on the packet. So these things are not going to work. There's no, I'm not saying it's impossible to take a solution developed somewhere, ML or not, and apply it. It's a useful starting point, but by default, I'll assume it would not work. And I would not even make the distinction of West to India or West to Europe or Europe to India. I'll say by default, something which was designed for A is not going to work on B. This is the assumption I'm going to start with. That doesn't mean I'm going to throw away A. No, but I'll start with that solution with the assumption it's not going to work, and we should put in adequate checks to make sure any possible scenario of failure is caught as soon as possible. So I'll probably just say that expectation, at least I don't have that expectation, not for ML, not even for general things. And I think it's our responsibility to be extra careful about these things when we are using a solution designed for A on B. We need to take extra care of this thing.
Yeah, certainly. Right, Jaidev.
Nothing to say much actually. That I don't think anybody would contest that localization or even simply transfer learning or adaptability of a given array, it's important and it's incredibly tough. Now, having said that, I was just skimming through the paper and I see that at the end of the paper they have in one of the appendices they have mentioned axis of discrimination, which is pretty interesting. Like Kritika mentioned, as axis of discrimination contains things like caste, gender, religion, ability, and so on. And that reminded me of a recent work that was done by Professor Ashwini Deshpande and her group at Ashoka University, which was looking at how people use their time, especially in low-income areas in post-COVID, post-lockdown India, right? And what that tells me is that collecting data isn't really it's not it's not impossible. It's not. I wouldn't say it's not the most difficult thing about the problem. It could well be, but at the same time, it's not an unsurmountable problem. The fact that people do surveys, the fact that people are able to get livelihood data, and I'm reminded of that other paper simply because of the fact that they also had these themes of axis of discrimination. How it happens along multiple axes, and I would imagine that the same axis hold true in ML and AI as well. So, given that there is willingness, there is intent to go out and collect this data, to study that data, at least academically. Forget about and I'm not sure, like if there is enough academic momentum, I'm sure that industry will follow. Having said that, though, if you were to go and calculate how much money is being spent on non-Indian or let's say Southeast Asian languages versus the Western languages, you will have a very clear answer of where intent lies. It's only, I think, a few months ago that IIT Madras released the very first Malayalam corpus. And why don't we have that for so many other Indian languages? God only knows. So, and it's I think people have attempted this, amount of investment and money spent on English, Chinese, Spanish, French, right? Versus Hindi, Marathi, and so many other Indian spoken languages.
Yeah, and thank you so much for highlighting this. I mean, this is again something that's very close to my heart because I work on low resource NLP, and again there was this wonderful paper by Microsoft Research India, and they at ACL last year, and they put all these languages into different categories and about with respect to how much data there is. And even languages like Hindi and Punjabi and Bengali and Gujarati, which have several million speakers, they, I mean, the ratio of the number of speakers versus to how much resources we have for those speakers is just bizarre. And on English, how much research, like when research in NLP is put out, they don't even mention the language at times because it's just assumed to be English. And that's the state of westernized research that we are in. But I think I'm really glad now. There's lots of work happening on Indian specific languages, on English and how. And yeah, I'm just really glad to see it.
I think I'll add a quick point here.
Sure.
India is really good at solving large-scale problems, be it in the civil engineering side of things or just dealing with problems at scale. So I really think that is one of India's strengths, and we should really use that to build technology and infrastructure that can impact a huge number of people. Like even if you look at how quickly the vaccine distribution has been set up, I think that's quite commendable. So.
Yeah, certainly. Like we have a demonstrable history of solving these extremely large scale and almost impossible to think of solution problems, whether that's getting votes in a very organized manner or vaccine drives or just things at scale. But yeah, I think no problem is too hard.
Somebody was suggesting that the vaccination contract and like the logistics of the vaccination should be handed over to the election commission. Capable of going to the farthest ends and setting up election booths for as much as one person in the middle of nowhere. If they can do that, they can get the vaccine delivered.
Yeah, certainly. I think there was even a movie made on it last year. I can't recall the name, but yeah.
There's a book by S.Y. Qureshi, former election commissioner.
Yeah. Excellent. Yeah, so I think that's all for this section. Slightly moving into a different category and slightly more controversial. Recently, there was what made waves was the firing of Google's top AI ethicist. I don't like that term exactly. I don't think she refers to herself like that either, but her name is Timnit Gebru, and she was fired from Google for apparently releasing, she wanted to release a paper about the harmful effects of large-scale language models, and which are very common these days. So this sparked an entire debate about how research in academia is in industry is just not feasible, because if you just put out bad research, then it's going to harm the company's objectives, and companies in general, they want to protect their resources, obviously. So there is this fundamental clash between academic freedom and working for an employer that has a reputation to maintain. So I just want to get your thoughts on the matter, on whether, knowing that you all have work in industry and some academic background as well. So what are your thoughts on the matter? Starting with Jaidev.
Well, first of all, I'm pretty sure that it's not like academic research also is as open as you'd like it to be. I'm sure things get pretty ugly, and I know they get pretty ugly over there as well. It's not like, there is capitalism on one side, which is sort of trying to eat everything up. And, there are people out there in academia who are just, who want nothing but the best for the world. It's not like that. There isn't a demarcated distinguishing line between the two. So you can have both problems in all kinds of places. There are companies who are very democratic. Of course, like when you're Google, I'm sure no matter how much they say, no matter how democratic they say they are, it's just impossible for them to be that democratic. Dr. Garbu and Google, I'm sure, were both well within their rights to do whatever each party did. And as long as you acknowledge that, as long as you accept that, that should be okay.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, no, even in academia, I'm very new to academia and I'm slowly building in this area. So I see all sorts of different pressures, whether it's being able to apply for grants, or so it's not like directly, nobody comes to your face and says, no, you shouldn't do this, but all sorts of these indirect suggestions that maybe that's not the best idea, maybe you shouldn't go there. Yeah, there's no money in that sector or something or the other. But,
no,
yeah,
neither is a walk in the park, and in both areas, there'll be a fair share of opportunists, go-getters. I mean, you'll find corruption wherever man sets their foot. So,
all right, good. Let's move on to Kritika with the same question. Do you have any thoughts on the matter, given that you work in this area and yeah, we've contributed so much in OpenMined?
Yeah, so I definitely think that there's decently more freedom in academia compared to working in research and industry. That's not just because of them not publishing papers that make them look bad. It's also because they have an agenda or a specific budget where they have certain areas they want to work on. So, like, I totally understand that any company or any private organization can say that, okay, we're not going to pursue this line of research. But I think the more problematic issue here was from what I understand, the way they treated the whole situation, like everything Timnit Gebru talks about, including the gaslighting and the kind of extremely, I would say, inhumane form of firing. Yeah, I think that seems to be the more problematic thing of the two here. Like, it's okay for me personally to join a company and be like, okay, my scope is limited to these topics, but I don't think that kind of treatment, or yeah, that was like a little bit of a reality check to kind of see that the company is there to preserve its own interests and not and only to an extent of its employees, like only to a very clear.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. There are these conflicting interests, and it's hard to tread upon that thin line. But it still exists, whether we think or not. Industrial research is going. It's I think further ahead in ML than anything I've seen in the recent history. More and more professors are moving to these large companies, and whether it is for the better
Yeah,
or worse.
that's a little scary because you realize that our professors are both in is very limited then. So another good thing is that research is being pursued by open source, and I think that's really, really great. Like, yeah.
Yeah, and OpenMined is such a wonderful example of.
Even just 5 years ago, it was unthinkable that I could actually lay my hands on a fast.ai forum or even TensorFlow or something like that and actually get to the cutting edge within a matter of minutes.
Yeah, certainly. Like, I've benefited so much from FastAI, just getting insights directly from these professors. And again, there's a community aspect of that as well. And I believe Twitter has been extremely beneficial in this regard. I follow all of these researchers, and you just have a direct line into their thoughts and minds and how they approach problems, and you can have conversations with them, and they might think that you might have something interesting to say, and you start entering into this again community in the end. But yeah, Twitter has been wonderful in that regard. All right, and now I think we have one last question with Sanket as well. Sanket, are you here?
Yep.
Hi. Go ahead.
Yeah. So yeah, welcome back, everyone. Sorry, hello, everyone. And yeah, I was just listening in the back, all the discussions that you were having. So recently I was listening to a podcast. The podcast name is Pivot, and it is being delivered by Scott Gareth Fisher and Scott Galloway. So it's kind of like a business and tech and comedy and like a very cool podcast. So in that podcast, they mentioned a term which is known as toxic charisma. So just to give you a brief about what toxic charisma is, like we see charismatic people around us, like they're super happy, they motivate everyone, they push everyone to do good work and extend their boundaries and everything. But there's also a kind of people which I would say I have seen in my professional and I would say community life, which is like toxic. So they basically have charisma around us, but they want you to work hard just to benefit for themselves. So let's just say I have a manager or something, and he or she pushes me very hard to work, and I see like after my hard work, they take all the credit. And same thing goes in research industry. I mean, I do have an example with me. There's a friend of mine who used to work at a lab, and his research got published without his name. So and usually these kind of things are very so the people who are entering in the field, they are very susceptible to these kind of things because they want a career boost, they want advices, and they look for these people and they see like, okay, I would definitely go and talk with these people. So I just want and like first, if you have seen these kind of things, and if you have like what are the danger signs, or what do you suggest to avoid these kind of things and tackle it? I would like Jaidev to start first.
Hero worship is always unequivocally bad. There's no doubt about that. And you could be a living god, but again, I was reading this book recently called Factfulness by Hans Rosling, and he said something very interesting. That he said that the worst dictator, or even the best, most benevolent hero, is not going to cause as much impact on the world as good, stable, and reliable systems can. So put your faith in systems, not people. Of course, it's true that systems are made up of people, but it's also, it's a chicken and egg problem to a certain size. But toxic charisma it's definitely a reality. We see it all around us. We see it every day.
Yep. All right. Thank you.
So yeah, put your faith in systems, not in people. And if there are no systems, make them.
Yeah, sure. I think you should also do a tweet for this. Yeah. Kritika, yeah, would you like to? Yeah.
So I think Jaidev's answer was enlightening to me. So I'm going to remember that. And another thing I would say is that I think personally, you always have a choice whether to let the toxic people or the toxicity in your life, or to kind of move on from it. It could look like, maybe you're switching departments for your research, maybe you're switching jobs, maybe you're doing something where you're trying to escape toxic environments. And I think that paying that cost of change is totally worth it, because even personally, you are going to progress so much more when you are in a healthy environment, interacting with people who understand that you're a human, and there will be weeks when you're not very productive, and there will be weeks when you might, conquer mountains. So, I think consistency is like the key game, and that comes with time and with practice. So it's important that leaders and professors and people in industry are accommodative of that phase of change that people go through. And like I've been in this situation where people, like not exactly people I work with, but people I interact with have been pretty toxic and pretty discouraging, just because, so like I come from a university where there's only around 10% of the batch is girls. And just due to the fact that I'm a girl, I've faced very weird comments and accusations, and it was pretty harsh. So, it takes a while to filter out all of that negativity and really surround yourself with people who empower you or enrich you. And that's what I'm doing right now. Like I literally only talk to people who have a positive influence on me, and I hope I have the same on them. So yeah, both professionally and personally, seek to connect with people who are understanding and open and motivating. And yeah.
Yeah, thank you very much. And yeah, it's a good answer. Like you always have a choice, and I think that's what defines us. So yeah, Shagun, would you like to comment on this?
My thought process is a bit different. It's not that there are obviously people I admire, but there are specific things for which I admire them. And beyond those things, it's like, I don't know. I mean, are they a good person? I don't know. Are they a good programmer? Yes. In fact, are they a good Python programmer? Yes. Are they a good Ruby programmer? I don't know. So the fact here is, you do not have to say that a person is good or bad in wholeness. You could just say, hey, this is a good programmer. They make good contributions. I could learn from their code, and that's it. You don't have to make heroes for your own. And even if the community has, I mean, sure, let them. You can't. You are not. In a game of having more heroes. So for me, when this question comes up, and when people specifically take names, I say, look, I like this particular paper from them, or this particular line of research. And beyond that, I mean, they could be a bad person. I'm not disagreeing with you. It's just that I don't engage. I don't care in a way. So now this is not to say that people should be bad or something, but this is a defense mechanism. Everyone has flaws, and some of the flaws are much worse than other flaws. I don't want to be in the business of passing judgment. At the same time, I don't want to interact with people who have a bad reputation or so. So even if there's a person who has extremely bad reputation, if there's something good to learn from them, learn it and move on. Um, I'm generally not comfortable with confrontations. I'm generally not comfortable with telling people they are wrong, and so I'll just say, okay, this is one useful thing. Thank you very much for that, and go my way. Just don't engage, or don't care about that. Importantly, just don't make heroes. At least don't make universal heroes. Say that, hey, this is a very good programmer, and that's it. That's the end of it.
Yeah, I think this is called the halo effect, where let's say that you actually have a 10x guy in your team who is excellent as a programmer but a jerk otherwise. But we tend to attribute that person being good at one thing to being good at everything else. Don't fall prey to the halo effect.
Just learn from their good skills, and that's okay. Like, I mean, save yourself, protect yourself. Don't care about don't care about them.
Yeah, I would say, like, spoken like a true diplomat. So yeah.
We
Okay,
have limited time, so learn from whosoever you can learn, and then if you can't learn, then just move on.
Yep, exactly. So yeah, I have a question. Like, I have one more question, which goes something like, rather than just asking what are the best advices for someone entering in the field, I would like to ask the question from different angles, which is like, what are the common pitfalls that people, I would say, young data scientists or young programmers encounter when entering the field, and like how to tackle them, and if you would like to include your personal experience in that you have faced in the past, that would be wonderful. So Kritika, would you like to take this first?
Hello?
Yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah, so the question is, what are the common pitfalls of being
When you're entering the field of data science and AI machine learning, and how to avoid them.
someone in this field, right? Am I audible? I think I missed what you were saying, Sanket.
Okay, so I was asking, like, what are the common pitfalls? Like, I would say 3 common pitfalls you would like to point out that people usually encounter when entering the field of data science, machine learning, or AI. And if you could include your personal experience, if that's something you have encountered in the past, that would be also useful for everyone.
Okay. I think the being narrow-minded, still need to be decently good with your coding skills. You need to, and even if you are looking to go for a software kind of role at some point, doesn't mean that you should not try out your hand at research. I think have an open mind. Don't be narrowly focused on a goal early on, because there's a lot for you to left to explore and learn, and often you learn things you learn new ways of doing mindset. That's it. Hello?
Yeah.
Was my answer audible?
I think I got some part of it, not all of it.
Okay. All I was saying is don't be narrowly focused on a subfield. Be open-minded to other fields, and just be more open-minded to trying out different things as a researcher, or as a coder, as a student, as an engineer, and that's going to really compound your knowledge. Like, it's just going to add up as compound interest.
Okay. All right. Jaidev, would you like to go first? Go next.
I'll just reiterate the same thing as Kritika. Generalize like crazy. The more time you have, the more opportunity you have early on, the better it is. In fact, I'm sorry, but all my answers are sounding like book recommendations now. But there's this book called Range by David Epstein. It's basically about how generalists triumph in a specialized world. And throughout the book, there are stories of how it is hyper specialization that usually kills people. My own professors told me, and I never listened to them, that you shouldn't be focusing too much on signal processing or machine learning or something like that. I never listened to them. Now I have to web development and I'm stuck like crazy. So when I joined Gramener, I was sort of thrust headfirst into a web app sort of a project, but when I actually got over it, I just enjoyed it like crazy. And of course, it eventually does tie back into data science and ML and all that. But yeah, the summary is just generalized like crazy.
Yeah, like
All
to
right.
add to Jaidev, we don't just mean generalize within computer science. Like, personally, I love painting, and I kind of gave it up for a few years, thinking I have to focus on my research and my career, ideas and concepts. And most people come up with really good ideas when they're actively enjoying their hobbies and also doing great work in their careers. So you don't have to choose.
Yep. All right.
Them
Shagun,
both.
would you like to? Shagun, would you like to answer?
Yep. I'll just give a meta piece of advice. Do not create problems artificially, which is, it's not about research problem. It's like, if you want to achieve X, clearly know what that X is and focus on that. Don't create sub problems of X in the hope of solving X. And to give a very concrete example, a question I'm often asked is, hey, if I do a PhD, can I land a X type of job? And my question is, you want a PhD or you want X kind of job? No, I want an X kind of job. So why are you, now you're creating a new problem, and now so this is where they'll create the first problem, which is to do a PhD. And then the next sub problem would be, how do I get, how do I quickly publish a few papers? And so your problem was to work at an X company, and now you're solving a completely different problem altogether. Be very explicit with yourself, be very honest with yourself in terms of what you want to achieve, and then decide what's the best way of achieving it. Just because something works for someone and you just assume that's going to work for you, and that also goes to a lot of people who are joining the field in the hope of good paying jobs and so on. If you want a good paying job, that's a good problem, but that doesn't mean it has to be solved via ML. Finance people make good money. There's nothing wrong with that. PNIES, I don't know. There are a bunch of jobs. If your goal is to make good money, make good money. Don't artificially create a problem and suffer over years and years. There was this blog recently which said ML PhD has now become extended 5-year interview process, and that's horrible. If you're doing a PhD to prepare for a research scientist position or researcher position, sure, you can do that. But that's not the problem you wanted to solve. You wanted to land a research-oriented job. You did not want to do an ML PhD to land that. So be very explicit. It's perfectly okay to say you want to make money. There's nothing wrong with that. Be explicit and focus on that. Don't create artificial problems for yourself.
And often it turns out that the problem that you actually solve has easier solutions than what you're trying to invent, right?
Exactly.
Something that is so spot on, it hurts, man. Seriously.
Yeah. Thank you for answering it beautifully. Yeah. So so I think this is
One thing I'll add quickly.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, and if people who are more interested in research, don't go crazy in research that less is more. You might read a few important papers in a field, and you might get some really good ideas which have not been done. So don't overload your brain with thousands of research papers.
Yep. So yeah, I think this is the end of the questions that we have prepared for the panel, and like we have a number of questions for you which are being asked on Zoom chat and the platform that we have used for the Q&A. So yeah, Arnav, I would like, yeah, so you're here.
Yes, I'm here. I'm back.
Yeah.
All right, moving on to the audience. Thank you all for your great answers. I think it was a wonderful discussion. I hope we haven't tired you too much, and we have a lovely audience who've asked lots of thoughtful questions. So we'll just keep you a little bit longer, and then we'll let you go.
Yeah, no. So speaker,
I guess
would
they
you
have
like
all been
to...
listening to us patiently for all this time, so we must answer the questions.
Yeah.
Should we? So speaker, should we take a, I don't know, maybe 2 minutes break? Do you like a break?
I'm good. I'm good to go.
Yeah, I'm good.
Okay. All right. Let's move forward then. So the first question we have is by Anonymous Plum Ifrit. The question they ask is, what is the best way to use Kaggle to become a data scientist? And I think, yeah, that what role do you all think that Kaggle plays in, and how corresponding it is to the role that competitive programming plays in making you a good programmer? So do you think Kaggle is a good replacement in the same way for machine learning? Let's start with Jaidev.
Kaggle's great. It's a fun place. It's very addictive. So keep that in mind as well. But do note that that is not how people do things in industry or in academia for that matter, right? Kaggle has a very specific pipeline of running things or doing projects. Like I said, it's a lot of fun. It's great community, and you get a lot of very interesting data sets, interesting competitions to work on. You learn a lot, definitely, no doubt about that. And one of the good things that Kaggle has done recently is that they have started ranking people based on different aspects. So you can be ranked by performance in a competition. You can be ranked by how good you are at forums and conversing with other people. You can be ranked by how good you are with exploratory analysis, sharing your notebooks, your stories, and all of that. So earlier it was just the leaderboard, right? So now they have diversified into all of these different ways of ranking users. It's a great place to spend a lot of time. But do keep in mind that that is something that's going to just it's exactly like competitive programming. Being number one on Hacker Earth or HackerRank doesn't necessarily make you a good software developer. Similarly, being a Kaggle Grandmaster doesn't make you the best data scientist in the world.
Yeah,
there are lots of other things to take care of other than just chasing one particular metric. Because you see, machine learning overall is a fairly mechanical process. Like if a problem is well defined and it's given to me, I know exactly what to do. I'll do one thing. If that fails, I know exactly what to do next, right? So technically I can automate it, and that is happening, right? So auto ML, it's not as obscure as it used to be. So just keep that in mind. Of course, there is a lot of creativity that comes into bridging the gap between the cutting edge and research versus what you can deliver to the consumer. There is a lot of room there, and that's where some real money is to be made. So that's there. But yeah, also Kaggle is great, very addictive.
Yeah. I think they made good use of that Google money. Certainly. Kritika, would you like to go next? I think there is a little bit.
Did I miss something?
Yeah, I just spoke your name. I was going to ask you if you want to go next. The question is about the role Kaggle plays.
Arnav?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, did you ask me something? I probably missed it.
Yeah, no worries. So I was just going to ask you what you think, what kind of a role does Kaggle play in a data scientist or machine learning practitioner's career?
Okay, so I think Jaidev covered everything that had to be said about Kaggle. It's a great gym, it's a great brain gym, and use it for that purpose. New challenge. That's it from my side.
Yeah, great. Short and sweet. Shagun, would you like to add something?
I don't think I've ever participated on Kaggle. I might have hosted a competition or two as part of some course TA duty. So I have no insights into how useful that is. Probably I'm just going to defer to Jaydev's answer on this. I'm sorry.
No, but that is valuable advice that one doesn't need to go through that path. There are several different paths, and Kaggle is just one way of getting there, and it's not absolute. You can successfully be a research scientist at FAIR without having spent a day doing Kaggle. So yeah. Definitely useful. Let's see. So we have other questions. I see on the chat that there is a following on Jaidev's good read list, which is interesting.
Oh, you're all too kind. Thank you.
All right. So Hitesh Kumar wants us to talk a little bit more about algorithmic bias. And they mentioned that recently there was pointed out that the Twitter's cropping algorithm, so when you post a picture, it would find the most salient point where your eye would essentially look at the first, and it optimizes for that. And because of that, it would try and find either the most amount of contrast or something like that. And it fares very differently when pictures of white people and black people were posted. So algorithmic bias, and we've touched upon this in the past as well, and algorithmic bias differs between the West and in India, but in general, it is certainly extremely hard problem, and lots of work is being done on it. But in what approach do you envision progress happening in that field, and how important is it? Shagun, you want to start?
So if I understand, the question is about image segmentation and facial detection and so on. Is that correct?
And the question doesn't specifically say, they just say algorithmic bias. They want us to talk a little bit more algorithmic bias, but they provide that example of the Twitter cropping algorithm, which was a saliency problem.
Yeah. Again, the disclaimer: I don't actively work in that area, but I completely agree that there is a problem. I don't think we understand at what level that happens. Is it because of the architecture? Is it because of the data set? Is it because of the loss? And I think all the components play a role. Unfortunately, it's not an area I work in, so I do not have any educated comments here. So.
Yeah, no worries. Kritika, would you like to add something?
Yeah, could you repeat the question for me?
Sure. So they talk about algorithmic bias, and the role it plays in machine learning models, which is obviously a lot. Models learn from data, and data has biases. They specifically mentioned that the Twitter cropping algorithm, it recently caused this wide uproar yeah. So if you could just highlight your thoughts on that.
Okay, so I think the starting point of bias in machine learning is bias in data. So for example, in medical data, you'll see that a lot of medical data sets are curated on the kind of data of white men in the US. So that excludes all sorts of other communities, which means that any drugs or medicines or diagnosis or treatment that you get out of such data sets will be biased towards the white male section of that society. So that's the starting point of data. So it's possible that in the Twitter image cropping thing, it's possible that the Twitter image recognition part of the software is used to seeing more white faces than black faces, or more white male faces than white female faces, or any other such comparison you can think of. And so that, like, to me, every time I think about bias in ML, it's a little confusing for me, because I know that these underlying algorithms themselves are not doing anything problematic. It's the data that we feed them which shows the bias in our data and in the way we perceive objects and collect things. And so while debiasing the predictions of our ML models is important, it's also important to make sure that we're not putting the blame on the ML. We're understanding where this bias is coming from, and we actively, like, we are the ones who are going to modify or bias the algorithm to fix the inherent bias in the data or the environment that we're working with.
Thanks. I think that was very insightful.
That's my perspective. It's maybe a little controversial, but that's my perspective.
Certainly, because I remember there was exactly at this point, this was the debate that people like Yannikon and others were saying that the data set is the thing that has the bias. And once you fix that, you'll find the source of all the biases. The math isn't the issue there. It can't be biased. And others were just suggesting that even if that is the case, it is the case, but just pointing that out isn't going to be helpful because in the end, there are implications. People are still going to be affected. So it would, yes, as machine learning practitioners, we do know that the source of bias is in the data, but because we live in this flawed world where there are biases present and we only capture the small form of human expression, it will still lead to downstream applications and it'll affect people's lives. But yeah, we'll see how it goes. Jaidev, do you have anything to add?
No, just there's this course called Calling Bullshit by the University of Washington. And they have 2 sections that are completely dedicated to calling out bullshit in AI. And in both of them, they're very clear that, the model is just a black box. This is the problems with the data. So yeah, I would just recommend watching either those YouTube lectures or those chapters of the book or something like that.
Great. Thanks so much. Let's see, we do have a long list of questions. Some of them are a bit too technical or specific, so I'm trying to avoid those. All right, let's stop on a light note. This question is specifically for Shagun, and it says, how can one get a position at FAIR after their master's? So I'm sure you get this a lot, but.
To clarify, you don't need a master's for a position at FAIR. I have my collaborators or undergrads from India who are working in FAIR at the same level as me. So let me be very explicit, you do not have a degree requirement. Think of degree as just a way of proving that you can work, which goes back to my earlier comment. If you want to work, you need to either have either you show that you have these skills, and there are n ways of showing that. So focus on the higher problem. Second part, I mean, the way I did it was I applied through the portal. If anyone wants a referral or something, feel free to reach out to me. But I'll suggest the same thing: apply through the portal. That's what worked for me. And yes, you absolutely do not have explicit degree requirement. If you have a degree, that's good. We are not going to say, hey, why do you have a degree? That's not going to happen. But it's also not that, hey, you don't have a degree and that's why you're out of question. My collaborators are undergrad working at the same level as I am, and our PhD working at the same level as I am. So I have seen both the ends of the spectrum.
Jaidev, anything you want to highlight as well? I mean, you don't work at FAIR, but still, in general.
Shagun answer was just amazing. Don't invent an unnecessary problem for yourself. And obviously, if he says they don't ask for a PhD, why bother? I mean, not why bother getting a PhD. Go ahead and do that, of course. But
yeah, like there's all sorts of these rights and wrongs. Right and wrong reasons of getting a PhD, and I'm going through all of them myself as a master's student, and it is a lot. It's hard, but we're all trying. Nobody has it all figured out, so give it a shot. As I think we pointed out earlier as well, it's not that you're not going to lose anything by just giving it a shot. So. All right, I think there are lots more questions, but we have kept the speakers for an extremely long time, and I think it's time to wrap up. So Sanket, do you want to hop in?
Yeah.
Closing comments? Okay.
Just a second. Yeah. So obviously, like this has gone way long than we have anticipated. So obviously, like we don't want speakers to taking up all the weekend. I think your weekend has just started, Shagun. Ours is the second weekend. So yeah, I mean, so yeah, I mean, I hope everyone learned something from this. Like this is a very good panel discussion, and I was also very enthusiastic of starting this year with a very different kind of format for the meetup. And I personally noted some very good points. Like obviously this meetup is recorded and would be live on the YouTube after as a normal video, so you can just rewatch it again and again if you want to, just grab something. But yeah, it was super fun for me, and I hope everyone learn something from this. And there's one more thing, like I would like to ask speakers: is there anything you would like to say to the community, the people and everyone? Any comments or anything? Yeah, the question is open for all. Like, yeah.
Thank you guys, and would ask people to participate in such events, give talks, give presentations. It's a useful skill to build. Give back to the community. We all have benefited from it, one way or the other, and we should try to give back as much as we can.
Yep.
Yeah, I think one thing I'd add is reach out for help to even to people who you think are really busy and you don't want to take up their time. Reach out to help. This community is filled with amazing people who have selflessly helped me and other people I know. And I think we all live with that sentiment. So we are also looking to help other people. So reach out for help for the small things and the big things, and we'd love to do that. So.
Jaidev, would you like to comment something?
I guess one thing that I would have found very useful if somebody told me this is that, everybody has an audience. You just have to find it. Quite often students have this question that, what I'm doing, is it too trivial, or is it too boring, or is it too useless? Don't make up your mind about that. Let your audience tell you that. And most often you'll find that there's always something that you can produce which is useful to a lot of people. It could just be something as simple as how to draw a histogram. I mean, I'm not even kidding, by the way.
Yeah, actually, writing.
Yeah.
Yeah, so like writing blogs on very simple things is a great way to build your resume. Like very easy, 10 lines of code on how to do this is a great blog. Like that's the one we look for when we're starting with anything. So, yeah.
So when I'm a noob and I'm googling how to make a histogram or something like that's what's going to catch my eye. There will be an audience.
Yeah.
Write for your past self.
Just add a data point in support of what Jaidev just said. I have actually received job offers because I have a blog, and I'm not, yeah, it helps. You would feel that, hey, who cares about it? Do it persistently. You are making a difference. It helps someone, and that's useful.
It will cause some trauma later in your life. You're like, of all the great things I've done, this is what people remember. And nobody remembers the good stuff. But that's fine. You can live with that.
Yeah, just to endorse Shagun's blog, he does a thing where he monthly or maybe weekly reads a research paper and just give a brief about it. So I find it very useful. I mean, luckily I had to read a research paper and it was on his blog, so I just read the summary and yeah, I was super good for this. So yeah, and yeah, I think like we are at the end of the meetup now, and so I think the link for if you want to submit a talk, there's a link at the bottom in the Zoom chat. You can just go over there and create an issue, as I've said it before. And yeah, I would say thank you everyone for joining, and I hope to see you next month. So yeah, I hope everything went fine. And if you have any feedbacks or maybe criticism, please post it. Message me, ping me. I'm on Twitter. And yeah, so thank you everyone.
Thank you. Great pleasure to be here.
Thank you.
I mean, speakers, please stay for a few minutes. Everyone,
Okay.